So this is going to be an introduction to GitHub Actions, mostly for developers that are not so used to work with this tool. Let me introduce myself. I am Wilmar Muñoz. I am a senior DevOps engineer here at WebProm. My tasks are all around AWS, serverless, and pipelines in the cloud. As you may already know, this is an online tech talk. Here at WebProm, we have this space to present our most important findings, things that we have done in the week, or research that we want to present to the community. This is a space to talk about different topics in the tech world that we work here at WebProm. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a like. We give these kind of presentations from time to time, so we get notifications in order to get this. So today, as I said before, we are going to talk about mostly GitHub Actions. This is an introductory talk. We don't want to get in deep, but we want to provide you the most important concepts in order for you to get up to speed on this topic. In order to do that, we are going to present the topics, then go in a small GitHub Actions config file, and finally use a serverless function in order to test a pipeline. Of course, as always, we want to give a little a small live demo. So here's the introduction. GitHub Actions is a continuous integration and delivered CI/CD platform that enhances the traditional GitHub repos. A lot of people used to use GitHub as a code repository tool, but a lot of them have now used the GitHub Actions tool, which is the tool that allows you to automate the workflows for your code. So here is the most basic thing about the GitHub Actions tool, which is the workflows. You normally have, as a user or developer, want to have a GitHub repo in which you store your code. So you want this tool in order to automate and make it reach your infrastructure or cloud provider. In this case, on this graphic, we are using AWS. The idea is that GitHub is gonna push events to GitHub Actions, and Actions is gonna take your code and bring it to the cloud. Some of the most important benefits of the GitHub Actions tool is that it is integrated with the traditional GitHub repos. So here you can see your code in a GitHub repo, and the Actions tab is gonna be there, easy to reach, easy to see the status, and wherever you want to run your automation. Some other benefits about GitHub Actions are related to their usage as a way to check things in your code. So previous to a merge, you can run this automation in order to build, test, or publish your code and make it in such a way that you cannot merge your pull request if the checks have not passed. So in this case, this is a check for linting and tests. Another benefit for GitHub Actions is that you can use different types of virtual machines. You can run this on Ubuntu, Linux, or Windows. So if you're building an app that requires to be compatible with multiple operating systems, this is the right tool to test this. GitHub Actions is mostly free for public repositories with some limits, of course. The limits are referenced here. For example, one of the most important ones is that you cannot run your actions more than 2,000 minutes, and you cannot use more than 500 megabytes of package storage. So this is something that I recommend you to check before going to use this. You have to be aware that there are some limits and that you cannot, at some point, if you're building a production application, that this is going to be a very bad thing to have. So if you are running production applications, at some point you might want to check on the different plans that GitHub provides. For example, the team plan, which costs $4 per month per user. Again, the free plan does include some important things to have in production, like protected branches, access to code space, multiple reviewers. So this is something to have in mind. So let's go deep to the GitHub Actions concept. We have mostly 4 concepts. The most important are these 4 here. So we have an event, a runner, a workflow, and a job. Let me try to explain this better with this presentation. An event is something, it's an activity in your code that can trigger an action, that can trigger your workflow. So in this case, for example, an event will be a push to your repo with a new commit. And this event is going to trigger your workflow that is going to run inside a runner machine. A runner is actually a server that runs your workflow when they are triggered. The workflow is the automated process. The automation is defined in a YAML file, and it defines the set of jobs that are going to be run wherever you trigger this workflow. So in this graph, you can see that a job is composed of several steps. Workflow is composed of several jobs, and the workflow is run in the runner machine, which is just a server. Of course, all of this is going to be run in the GitHub cloud, and this is going to be automated using a YAML file. So in order for you to understand the YAML file definition, let's go to a quick demo. What I'm going to do now is to create a simple YAML file with a definition for a simple pipeline. The prerequisites for this are going to be that you have a GitHub action. In order for somebody to run this demo, it's required to have a GitHub account with SSH keys, AWS credentials, and AWS CLI configured. So our goal now is to create a workflow that installs the npm package for serverless and show these versions. I'm gonna go deep in this serverless framework later, but for now, you just want to know that this is a package for npm, and it's gonna be installed the GitHub with GitHub Actions. So here we have this is my repo. I have called it HA serverless intro. I have stored this in. Just give me 1 second here. This is GitHub action. GitHub, sorry. I have created this repo here. So I'm gonna, and this is a copy that I have in my laptop. So what I'm gonna do now is just to create .github folder. This GitHub folder is gonna have the workflow definition. Inside the GitHub folder, I'm going to create a new workflows directory. And inside the GitHub and workflows directory, I'm going to create a simple workflow. So I'm going to create a file, a YAML file. I'm going to be calling my workflow. I'm gonna open the editor here. So inside my workflow, I'm gonna add the components that I was describing previously. So this workflow is gonna have a name. In this case, it's gonna be my HA workflow demo. So the workflows have a name, but you can also have a name per run. So each time that the workflow is going to be run, it's going to have a different name if you want. In this case, I'm going to put just this message saying that I am learning GitHub Actions. This syntax here, so this is a traditional YAML file, but this syntax here is something special about GitHub Actions that allows you to get some context from the current environment in which this is running. So the context GitHub has a lot of information, and in this case, it has an element called actor, which is just my username. So when we see this running, we will see that my name is going to be replaced here, my username in GitHub. As I said before, this can be run on different events. In this case, I'm going to just run this on a push event. And the workflow is composed of jobs. Jobs can have a name. Like in this case, let's check serverless package. And this job is going to run on a Ubuntu latest machine, which is an Ubuntu virtual machine. So this is going to be the latest version of Ubuntu in the cloud, in the GitHub cloud. And as I said before, a job is composed of steps. Steps have a name, of course. I can put whatever I want here. In this case, let's name it step 1. And this is going to use something interesting from GitHub Actions is that you don't actually need to write always your scripts. GitHub Actions have something called the marketplace. Just give me a second here. So you will find the marketplace in which you will find a lot of already built workflows. So for example, if you want to set up an Node.js environment, you don't want to do that by yourself. So you will find an action that allows you to set up this completely without you writing more than this. So basically, the way that we use this is that we go for the actions space / the name of the action. In this case, checkout. Checkout is just going to the folder and pull in the latest version of the repo. So this is just going to, it's like doing CD and git pull. The next step will be set up Node, as I said before, using this action here. So setup Node is gonna just install Node.js in the environment and making sure that it is running correctly. So I can use this action here in the version 3. And I'm gonna provide it a Node version so that it will install the version 16 of Node in my runner. instance. And next step would be in step 3. Have in mind that I didn't set a name in the previous step, so that's fine. So I'm gonna install the serverless package with npm. And one last step on this workflow will be get the serverless version, which is run serverless forgot to say at the very beginning, if you guys have any question, you can, while I'm writing this, just let me know. So this will be a very basic workflow. The workflow is all the file here that is going to be triggered on an event, which in this case is a push to the repo. The workflow has different jobs. In this case, I just have one job, and this job is composed of 4 steps in order to check the serverless version. Having this, I'm gonna run in the status. Oh, I didn't create this in the right folder. This is gonna be here inside. Let me just remove this one. So inside the GitHub folder workflows, I have the new workflow for checking out the version of Git status. And I can add this as a new commit with the new workflow. Now that I uploaded as a new commit, it should be here, and you can see in the Actions tab that I have this new workflow here, and this is running already. The nice thing about this is that you can access the automation using this Actions tab. Click on the action. In this case, I name it check serverless package. And this is running each one of the steps. Oh, what was this? Let me check on the. Let me see what happened here. It's actually running everything. I don't know why it's showing this, but as you can see here, it was able to run the serverless package and grab the version. Of course, this is a very simple example. In order to get the serverless package, you had to install it. But anyway, you can elaborate something more complicated, which is what we are going to do next. So here is the simple workflow. I'm gonna go to my repo that I have already prepared some parts for the demo, the next demo. I'm gonna check out the branch here. So for the demo 2, I have already created a serverless configuration. Let's go in deep in this. So serverless is a framework that allows you to deploy and run serverless functions in the cloud. This is oriented mostly to AWS. For those that are not so used to this, Lambda functions in AWS are just a piece of code that you can upload and route without maintaining infrastructure. So you have a small piece of code, like in this one, This is a JavaScript code that I'm gonna be deploying to AWS. So serverless allows you to define this in a YAML file too, and run your deploy in order to get this in the cloud. In this case, I have a serverless definition here with a service name and a function name. My function is called save, which is gonna get an URL from the command line, and given that URL from any file in the internet, the function is gonna take the file from the URL and upload it to an S3 bucket. So the main components here are the function, which is described here in my handler, the resource that is an S3 bucket, and the permissions that the functions needs to have in order to upload files to the S3 bucket. The serverless definition is a YAML file, as I said, and has a name, has a framework version, and in this case has a custom parameter in order to set the bucket name, the S3 bucket name. In the resource sections, I have described a bucket. This is very simple. This is a bucket called my bucket. The type is defined here and has a bucket name that depends on the parameter that I set here. The permissions in order to load it to the bucket are strput object and strput ACL. And the function is called save, with a handler that is gonna be set in this JavaScript code. The JavaScript code is really simple. The function has a method called save that's gonna take an URL and try to fetch it and then upload it to the bucket. So basically what we do here is we use the node fetch command, node fetch package from npm. It fetches the URL, and if it fails, it's gonna throw an error. And then we are gonna use the AWS CDK in order to upload the file to the bucket. Basically, you need to define your code. In this case, this is Node.js, so it's gonna have a package.json, a handler, which is the JavaScript code, and the serverless definition. The nice thing about this is that you can just run serverless deploy once you have the YAML file definition with your permissions, with the resources that you need in the AWS cloud, and the code, which is in the same directory. You can just run serverless deploy in order to get this. Sorry, I didn't switch to the right repo. In this case, this is a serverless app called my serverless app, and I'm gonna root serverless deploy there. As I said before, the prerequisites for this is that you have the AWS credentials configured. This takes some time. Internally, serverless uses something called CloudFormation. So it has to update something called the CloudFormation stack. CloudFormation is the infrastructure as code tool that is provided by AWS in order to create resources in the cloud, in their cloud. So what I'm doing here is just running serverless deploy, and it's gonna take my code, my serverless definition which includes an S3 bucket, and it will create a S3 bucket in the cloud. It will assign some permissions to the Lambda function, and the Lambda function is gonna be able to upload files to the S3 bucket. So the service is deployed on AWS. I can go to the console. You will see the S3 bucket that I created, which is HI demo 1 to 3. Let me delete this file from here, which I already created before the demo. And the file's deleted. So I can try now to run this function. I can actually run this function with a command. So as I said at the beginning, the function is going to take a parameter called image URL. The image URL is any image, is an URL in order to get an image from any. Let me check GitHub docs, for example. I'm gonna grab some image from here. So let's go here, for example, get started. It's cool that I don't find any image here. Anyway, I have an image ready here, which is this image. You can see it in the GitHub docs website. It's just an image with description of what happens when you run an event in the GitHub Actions workflow. So I'm gonna provide this as a parameter to my function, and I'm gonna be calling it GitHub workflow. So what I did was to invoke my code, which is a Lambda function, locally, and provide it with an URL. And the Lambda function is gonna upload this image to the S3 bucket. Let's go to the console again. So here we are in the S3 bucket that I just created, and the image was uploaded there. If I download it, you will see that this is gonna present the image. So the image was taken from the URL and uploaded to this bucket with Lambda. We can see also that the Lambda function was uploaded. And the Lambda function was executed in my laptop, from my laptop. The last step for the demos are just, so we already have a workflow, we already have a Lambda function working with serverless. So the last step is gonna be create a workflow for serverless. In this case, I already did that. What we have here is then, let me just don't save this. So I have another version of my workflow. The workflow that we wrote at the very beginning is modified. Let me delete this to make it more readable. So the step 1 is always the checkout. The step 2, in this case, is configure the AWS credentials. In this case, I set AWS credentials, which is access and secret access key, using this action called configure AWS credentials. So I don't have to do that manually. Instead, I will just be providing this as parameter, providing the credentials as parameters. The next step is set up Node again. In the pipeline, we are gonna install serverless with npm install. Then we are going to go to the serverless directory, run npm ci or install, if you like. and then gonna run serverless deploy, which is the command that will actually upload the Lambda function to the cloud. This is a small modification to the initial pipeline that we had. Just one note here, you don't actually want to do this in for production environments. This is not a best practice. So in a production environment, you can close this. You want to use something different like IAM roles, or a better way to authenticate GitHub actions like using OIDC. So this is the pipeline for uploading the serverless. I'm going to commit this. Git add. Change to the pipeline. Commit. Change pipeline. Let's git push. So right now we have the actions. The name is the same because I have not changed it. And as you can see here, the name is still GitHub Actor is learning GitHub Actions. So this is not changed. And you will see that the action is running. It is installing serverless. It is going to the serverless directory, running npm install, and running serverless deploy. So this is basically the same thing that I did locally, but this is going to be done by GitHub Actions. It is automated. It is verifiable. It can be run on every commit that you send to your repo. So this is the magic about GitHub Actions. It is deploying. Once this is done, we will see that the Lambda function is uploaded to the cloud. I can start doing changes here, change your logic, change your code, and you will see that for every commit that I send here, for changes in the code, the Lambda function is going to be deployed. So this is, as I said, the magic and the important things about the automation with GitHub Actions. And that's it, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. And if you have any questions, and this is the moment. Okay, that's okay. If you don't have any questions, let me.
I have a question, Wilmer. Well, thank you for the line talk. It was really interesting, and you went deep on every topic. I want to know if you see that GitHub Actions have some downside compared with other tools that you used in the past, or some, I don't know, problems.
Yeah, from my experience, there is GitHub Actions is not, if you compare this with other tools, like for example, GitLab and Jenkins, there are so many features that are available in GitLab and Jenkins that are not available yet in GitHub Actions. But I think this is not gonna happen. This is gonna be happening for a short time, because you will see new contributions from the community every day to enhance the GitHub Actions capabilities. So that's something that I will mention right now. GitLab, for example, has a lot of more features to build in more complex pipelines. same as Jenkins. But I think that GitHub Actions is going to be being equal and in a short time.
Good, thanks.
Okay. Okay, thank you guys for your time. If you don't have any more questions, this was the talk for today.
Good, thank you. Really good talk.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.